and why we eat together. I am so excited to be here at the first LlewellynCon. How amazing is this, right? We're coming to each other from thousands of miles away, all over the world, and we get to chat with each other. I think this is amazing. Now, today, I'm coming to you from one of the most sacred and favorite places that I know in the world, and that's the kitchen. I love being in the kitchen. And it doesn't matter, by the way, if you have a big fancy kitchen or a commercial kitchen, like in a restaurant, or whether we're in a little one-bedroom trailer with a hot plate and an Instapot. Doesn't matter. Anytime we get together and cook food or share food or prepare food together, I think it's magical. So I really wanted to thank Llewellyn, by the way, before we get too far into this, in case I forget. I really wanted to thank Llewellyn for putting this all together. And I do have a quick announcement. It's a bit sad, but a dear friend of mine, somebody that loved the book that you can see behind me there, unfortunately, they commented on a post of mine yesterday, and then they died, unfortunately. So I just wanted to take a moment and just hold them in my heart as I'm doing this presentation. So I'm a little bit weepy today, and because I was chatting with them about food a fair bit, it's probably, you know, it's in the back of my mind there. But food is magic, and we'll do some good healing work maybe for their family. So let's talk about 5 simple ways that you can make your kitchen more magical, or the food that you eat more magical. And the first thing that I want to say about this is that anybody can do this. So if you're a gourmet chef, fantastic. If your idea of cooking is pulling back that little plastic film and putting something in the microwave, brilliant. You don't have to be a trained chef or even a good cook to be able to participate in food magic. And there's a reason for that. And that is, you have gone your entire life up to right this minute eating food. Now, there may have been times when you didn't have as much food as you wanted, or it wasn't the right kind of food for you, but you have eaten enough food in your lifetime to be here right now. Everybody knows how to eat. And so in that way, we can do magic, because we can make the food that we eat sacred. So I'm going to chat for a few minutes on each one of these 5 ways that you can make your kitchen a sacred place and do some good food magic there. And then we'll open it up for a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions, you can type them in and we'll chat from there. All right, so way number 1 is to create a ritual to sanctify the place that you cook. Now, I'm going to use the word kitchen, but it might not be a kitchen for you. You might grill in the back garden. And so that's the place where you do most of your cooking. It might not be that you've got an entire room dedicated to cooking. Again, you might have a hot plate on a counter. So it doesn't really matter what you call the kitchen. The word is not important, but it's the place that you prepare food, whether that's for yourself or for 1,000 people in a restaurant. Doesn't matter. So wherever it is that you prepare food, that's what we're going to consecrate. And if you think about it, here's the ritual. I want you, when you get a moment, to go into your kitchen and stand in the middle of it as best you can. And moving around your kitchen in a clockwise direction, look at everything you've got until you've turned a full circle. So look at the stove, look at the mixer, look at the packages of Cheez-Its that you've left out on the counter, whatever it is that you've got. Take a full 360 of your kitchen. And as you do that, think about all the events that have happened in kitchens that you've been in. So maybe you remember a grandmother's kitchen where you first learned how to bake cookies. Or maybe your kitchen is a place where you made a meal for a date, and that date turned into a partner, and that partner and you got married, or those partners and you all lived together. Think about the memories that are associated with your kitchen or the kitchens that you've been part of in your life. And think of the happy memories first. That great meal, that first time you got to use those fancy cooking knives that you bought online, whatever it is. And then think about the foods that you've eaten or made in that kitchen. Foods that have healed people because they weren't feeling very well, or favorite meals that make kids or loved ones just shine because they know you're making your famous cinnamon rolls. Whatever it is, keep doing that as you think about your kitchen. And then while you're in your kitchen, maybe there have been times in your life when food wasn't plentiful. I know that's true for me. There were years in my life where I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. And so think about those lean times. Hopefully they're long in your past, but if they're not, think about the times where food wasn't as plentiful for you as it is right now. And think about all the people that have contributed to whatever cooking knowledge you've got, even if it was your dad showing you how to put pizza in the microwave. Doesn't matter. Think of all of the people in your life that have shown you something about cooking. Maybe you don't cook at all, and what you think of as cooking is picking up your phone and ordering DoorDash. That's great. That's okay. If food is coming to your house and you're unpackaging it in your kitchen, that's brilliant. Okay. So that's ritual number one. Stand in your kitchen, think of all the food memories, all the good times, maybe some of the rough times, and then speak them out loud while you're in your kitchen. Oh, I remember the time when Grandma Lillian showed me how to make rock cakes. Oh my goodness, Auntie Elsie used to love to make ham sandwiches, and I just miss her ham and cheese and cucumber sandwiches. Whatever it is, say those things out loud. It will help make your kitchen a sacred space. Think about whenever you maybe form a magical circle, or if you visit a holy site, a temple site. Think about the way you approach those rooms or those circles. You're creating a boundary, a barrier that says, in this place, magic can happen. And that's what we're doing with our kitchen. So go into your kitchen, do a big 360, thank your kitchen for all the wonderful memories you've got. Thank all the people in your life that have given you kitchen memories. That's the first way we can make our kitchens sacred. All right, now the second way. We're going to consecrate our tools. So many people that practice some form of witchcraft have magical tools that we use. Maybe it's an athame or a wand or a cauldron. Think about all of those wonderful toys and trinkets that we get to play with, right? Maybe it's robes. Well, guess what? Every one of those exists in your kitchen today. Let me give you an example. Here is my favorite wooden spoon. I love this spoon. This spoon is like my wand. I'll tell you why. Wands are traditionally thought of as directing energy, right? So they're an extension of our hands. Well, that's what my wooden spoon is. If I'm cooking a big pot of chili or stew or something, if I want to see what's going on at the bottom of that pot, I'm not going to put my hand into a pot of boiling, bubbling stew. I'm going to use my spoon, and I'm going to put my spoon in, and I'm going to stir it, and I'm going to agitate the food. I'm going to direct the energy that's in that food as I stir it. And I can tell if food is sticking to the bottom, if the vegetables are overcooked or just right. And then, of course, I can bring up whatever is at the bottom, and I can have a lovely slurp of whatever I'm cooking. It's the same thing if I'm mixing a salad. I can mix all of the food in a certain direction and mix the magic into it. So my wooden spoon serves just like my wand. My next favorite tool, oh my gosh, I love these so much. These are my kitchen knives, two of my knives anyway, and I love these. Now, these are my kitchen athames. These are my ceremonial tools that I use in the kitchen. So I literally took my lovely chef's knife here, and I took my athame that has been consecrated on an altar in a very wonderful ritual, and I touched them together. I held them like this, one next to each other. And I thought about, in ritual, how I use my athame to cut the space, to clear and set the circle, to discard the things that I no longer need to make my magic happen. And guess what? That's exactly what I do with my knife. That's my chef's knife. So this is a consecrated knife. One of my next favorite tools is the chalice or the bowl or the goblet, right? So if you think about your house, you've probably got bowls and you've probably, oh, look, it's a wine glass. Excuse me. Oh, there's a little magic in that, I can tell you. So you've got chalices in your house. These are sacred vessels that hold food or drink and you might serve people in. So in your home, you've got magical chalices. So again, I took my magical chalice and I held it up next to some of the items that I use regularly and I consecrated them. And lastly, I've got, I'm not wearing it now, but I've got an apron. And I usually have a hat I wear in the kitchen as well. It's just a regular cap I wear backwards. But my apron is like my robe. So it's like my ceremonial robe. People know when they come to my house, when I put on that white apron and I turn that hat backwards and they see me with one of these in my hand, they know that magic is afoot and I'm ready to chop and slice and dice and make my kitchen magic. So you might have other tools in your kitchen like the stove or an Instapot. Guess what they are? Those are cauldrons, because you put foods and ingredients into them, and then before you know it, add a little heat, come out a little bit later, and now all of those separate ingredients have turned into something amazing. Think about that with a cake, right? If I gave you a spoonful of flour and salt and a raw egg and said, there you go, enjoy that, it'd be terrible. But add it into a vessel, stick it into a cauldron, like an oven for a little bit, and it comes out as a delicious cake. So consecrate your tools, whether it's your apron, whether it's your knives, whether it's your Instapot cauldron, whether it's your magical wand spoon, just go around the entire kitchen and touch everything, consecrate everything. And to consecrate, by the way, just means to make sacred. It means just to acknowledge that the tool that you're using is now a magical tool. And guess what? Every time you chop, every time you slice, every time you use your knife, you're creating magic. Every time you, oh, don't do that, that's sharp. Every time you stir, you're stirring in magic to your food. All right, third thing, let's talk about the sacredness of food. Oh God, this 30 minutes goes so quickly. How to prepare magical food. So here's the thing, I'm gonna tell you a little secret. Sometimes we get very hung up on whether our foods are organic, whether they're grown locally, come from our back garden, come from a farmer's market, whether they are foods that had the best life possible until that moment when they didn't. Here's the reality. I, today, have the privilege and the luxury to be able to choose the food that I want to eat. That's not always been true for me, and it might not be true for you now or at other parts in your lifetime. But all food is sacred. Look, here's the reality of it. If your kids come home from wherever they've been, or it's 6 o'clock and you're making dinner, and you're peeling back the little cellophane on a microwave food dish, and you put it in the microwave, and 5 minutes later it comes out, and that's the food that you have, and that's the food that sustains your life, or somebody you love, it sustains their life, then that food is sacred. It's wonderful if you can choose organic. It's wonderful if you can choose local. It's wonderful if you can grow something in your own garden. But if you live in a building 10 stories up and you've got a tiny little kitchen, you're not going to be able to grow your own food. So think about food, all food, as sacred. And one of the ways that you can make food sacred is to know where it comes from. And if you can't find out where the food comes from, imagine where it might come from. So somebody made that pizza dough. Somebody was in a factory putting peas in a can. Some person drove across the country to deliver those foods to a grocery store. Some farmer or farm worker picked those foods in the hot, blistering sun or in the pouring rain whenever that harvest is due. There's always a person somewhere behind the food that you're eating. And when you stop and acknowledge those folks or acknowledge your own labor in getting that food, you make food sacred. Now, there are also ways to prepare magical meals. So that's the next thing we're going to talk about. So far, create a temple. That's number one. Number two, consecrate your tools. Number three, spend some time talking about the sacredness of food. Tell the people that you live with food stories, and where food comes from. Take a moment, think about it before you eat, maybe say a quick blessing. Thank all the people whose hands have touched your food. And then number 4 is how to prepare magical meals. Now, look, we could spend hours talking about this one. In fact, I wrote a whole book about it, right? But here's the thing about preparing sacred meals. A lot of it has to do with intention. So why are you making this meal? If you're making chicken soup because you've got a loved one that's not feeling well, when you chop the ingredients, think about, I'm cutting away what doesn't serve the person I'm cooking this food for. As I slice and dice these, I am activating nutrients and oils and minerals in these foods so that when my friend eats those foods, they will begin to heal. When you stir every ingredient in, if you want to bring them good health, stir in a clockwise or a jessel direction, right? Stir the food and say out loud, I want this chicken broth to be healing and nourishing. I want this food to provide comfort. It's amazing when you put that kind of intention into food, how the taste of the food changes. And you can learn a little bit about different foods. So perhaps there are herbs and spices that are really good. If you are making chicken soup, I highly recommend putting in turmeric. Powdered turmeric is amazing. It has been scientifically proven to help with inflammation. I have a teaspoon of turmeric every single day because the joints in my fingers are a bit rough, you know, from typing all day and from chopping and slicing. So turmeric really helps with inflammation for me. So you can do a lot of study on different herbs and spices and ingredients. And when you put those into the food, think about those healing properties or those aphrodisiacal properties as well. Maybe you're not making a meal to heal somebody. Maybe you're making a meal to spice up life a little bit. So think about those spices, right? Think about chilies and paprika and hot, fiery, spicy ingredients that you can use. Think about making things in bite-sized nibbles so you can feed each other or each other's or yourself. No judgment. Whoever you want to feed and be sexy with, you do it. So think about the ingredients that you're cooking. Think about the meals. If you're making a special family meal, maybe at Samhain or some other special time to you and your family or coven, think about the peoples that made those foods beforehand. Think about why that meal is special. And that really brings us to number 5. And number 5 is honoring ancestors, creating devotional meals for yourself or for your gods or your ancestors. So my grandmother, who died about 17 years ago, oh, I loved her so much. She practically raised me. I have a tattoo here of a, whoops, there it is. Oh, I can't show it. I'm backwards. There you go. I have a tattoo of lavender because my grandmother's house always smelled like lavender. She had lavender everywhere, little sachets, little pots of lavender. Oh, and I remember very vividly, I can picture it right now, being in the kitchen and watching her make shepherd's pie. And in the book, I've got a recipe called Shepherd's Pie to Live For, and it's based on my grandmother's recipe. And of course, I've added to it over the years and changed it. But whenever I make that shepherd's pie recipe, I always think about my grandmother. I think about the times we spent on Friday nights. I would often spend weekends there. On Friday night, she'd often make shepherd's pie. And I think about that meal. And I think about learning to cook with her. And now I cook that same meal, and my family know that that's a special meal, and they've all got the recipe, and they all cook their own version of shepherd's pie, and they think of me. And I'd like to think that at some point when, you know, this is all withered away and I'm an ancestor, that they'll remember the times that they spent in the kitchen with me. So creating a devotional meal to an ancestor, whether that's, you know, somebody in your biological lineage or somebody that you respect as a mentor that's no longer with us, if you cook food that you know they like or would have liked, or that they taught you to cook, it's a way of connecting with your ancestors. And in that way, you can make your kitchen a sacred temple to all of your ancestors, whoever you claim as your ancestors. You can make devotional dinners for your gods. I love doing this. So if I'm going to make a meal for Dionysus or Bacchus, ta-da! That's right, this is not water, folks. I shouldn't really be drinking in the middle of the afternoon, but it's magic time, doesn't count, right? So if I cook a meal for Dionysus, there's going to be wine, there's going to be grapes, there's going to be goat, there's going to be cheeses, there's going to be all manner of sumptuousness. Like if I cook a meal with or for Dionysus, absolutely, I'm going to pull out all of the stops. Lots of foods to eat with the fingers, lots of sensual foods. If I'm cooking a meal for Inanna, the ancient Sumerian goddess, we can go back into sacred texts and we can see that the ancient Sumerians, 8,000 years ago, stamped into clay tablets the stories of their gods and recipes. We actually have 35 recipes that are thousands of years old. And I actually put one or two of them in the book. So if I want to connect with a deity from a particular place, a particular time, or a particular culture, I'll cook with the ingredients that they would recognize. The very same ingredients in the case of Inanna, dates and cumin and garlic and wild arugula and lamb, for those of you that eat meat. I can cook a dish rich with those spices. Oh gosh, my fingers will smell exactly the same way that the priests and priestesses in Inanna's time would have smelled, and the offerings wafting up to Inanna will be exactly the same. So again, whether you're doing that with ancestors or gods, or even for yourself, you can create devotional meals using the ingredients that belonged to those folks in those times. And in that way, we can create all sorts of offerings. And the last bonus thing that I'm going to say, and then I think it's probably time to open it up for questions, but the last thing that I'm going to say is that I love being on top of Glastonbury Tor or in Stonehenge or in a vineyard here in California that is special to me. And I love doing ritual in those places. Somewhere sacred where when the moon is full and I'm with my coven. I love that. But I don't get to do that very often, partly because, pandemic, but also, we only get to meet so often. But every single day I go into the kitchen. Every single day I make food and I eat food, whether it's from my own hands, grown in my own garden, or whether it is a food that I've bought at a shop, or whether it's something somebody else has prepared and I'm eating. But every single day I get a moment to practice. I get a moment to be in ritual. To borrow a phrase from another tradition, I get to be in communion with food and ancestors and animals and the spirits of place that inhabit the area that helped make the food. I get to be in communion with the sun and the rain and the soil. Every single thing that I touch in my kitchen connects me to this world, to this body, to this place. And when I cook for you, it's an expression of love. Now look, I love being in all of those sacred places and doing high magic on top of a hill. But the most sacred magic I think I ever have done is feeding you, is feeding somebody that I love. Because when I feed them, I nourish them. And sometimes I nourish their body, and sometimes I nourish their soul. I'm gonna tell you a little secret. When I'm not feeling very well, when I'm having a really hard day, my amazing partner, Phoenix, will sometimes bring me jelly beans. Now look, there is nothing nutritionally wholesome about jelly beans. They're terrible. It's cornstarch plus sugar plus cornstarch plus sugar plus red food dye, number 9. There's nothing good about jelly beans from a nutritional standpoint. But you know what? When she brings me those jelly beans and I rip open that little bag and I eat them, I feel bad. There is something magical about those beans because it's an expression of love. Phoenix isn't nourishing my body when she gives me jelly beans, but she is nourishing my heart. And that's something that I think we all do when we cook, when we prepare food. We prepare foods that make people laugh, feel full, feel comforted, feel welcomed. We prepare foods when people are in crisis. One of the things we often do when a friend dies suddenly, or when there's a national crisis, we often prepare food for our neighbors. And in times of joy too, we gather when we can, and we bring our favorite dishes, and we share food together, and we share stories. Creating that magic every day is the highest form of magic I know. So if you're somebody that for years and years has toiled in the kitchen, in your own kitchen, you've been scared to cook, you're a gourmet cook, it's okay to go into the kitchen. It's okay to pull full food out of the fridge, to unwrap a frozen pizza, to follow a recipe that you love, and to cook food for yourself and for others. It's the highest form of magic there is, because you're spending your time and your energy and perhaps your love, your passion, your compassion, your will and wish for people to be well and fed and healthy and never hunger and never thirst. You're giving that to them and to you. Feed yourselves as well. That is high, high magic. So for anybody that's thought kitchen witchery, it's throwing a few herbs in a stew, it's making a potion. Yeah, it is. It's all that. And it is so very much more. Okay, I think I've probably used that most of my time. So let's have a look and see if there are any questions that have come through. And I apologize, I have to get very close to the screen because I forgot my glasses. Let's see. Chocolate and cheese. I don't know that that's a question, but I heartily agree. Chocolate and cheese are magical foods. I love chocolate and cheese. There are so many things you can do with chocolate. You can heal yourself. You can melt it. You can lick it off your fingers or somebody else's fingers. And cheese, I mean, really, is there a cheese that's bad? No, there's no cheeses that are bad. Let's see what else we've got here. Let me see. Thank you so much. This was fun. Oh, I love making breakfast. Oh my gosh. I tell you, I love making breakfast too. It's one of my favorite meals of the day when I get a chance to make breakfast, and I really do try every day. I love to take, I'll tell you one of my favorites. I'm going to tell you a little aphrodisiac. Not that we're likely to ever be in that situation, but just in case. I love to make a good poached egg. I love to put it on top of avocado toast. I know that sounds awfully bougie, but it's just the truth. I love avocado toast with a nice poached egg on it. I like meat, so I will put some meat proteins on there as well. And you pierce that poached egg and it dribbles all over the avocado. Oh my God, it is creamy and delicious and tasty and a bit crunchy with the toast. It's the best thing ever. Absolutely love it. Thank you for this. I have a whole new perspective on my kitchen. Oh my gosh, that's fabulous. I'm so glad that you have a new appreciation of your kitchen. Here's a last little trick for you. Extend that out. So when and if you are able to go to a friend's kitchen or to a restaurant, think about their kitchen as well. Think about restaurants as sacred places. Why? Because you're exchanging food there. Think about your DoorDash driver or your Uber Eats driver or the person from Instacart that's been delivering your groceries for the last few weeks. Think about them as a messenger from the gods. Think about them as Bacchus's sidekick showing up with delicious foods for you. You can't not appreciate food and where it comes from when you start thinking about it magically. Let's see what else we've got here. You are killing me now. I want poached egg on avocado toast. Make sure you've got something crunchy, a nice big crunchy bread, some bacon bits if you do meat. You can even put some nuts on it if you like. Walnuts, arugula, a little bit of creme fraiche or sour cream, avocado, poached egg. It's pretty much perfection on a plate right there, my friend. You have inspired me to cook more often. Oh, excellent. Is there a ritual you do when, that question went away so quickly I couldn't even read it. I think it said, is there a ritual that you do when you finish a meal? Yeah, there is. It's called the dishes, and I have somebody else do it. If I can, my favorite ritual, somebody else doing the dishes. No, seriously, there is. If I'm doing a ritual devotional meal for a god or a goddess or an ancestor, I thank them. I also make a plate for them. And just so you know, if you're making a plate for your ancestors, don't cut off that scabby bit of fat on the end of the steak. Don't give them that wilted piece of lettuce. I think they know. So cut off one of the best bits. Make a little plate for the ancestors. What I do with mine is I take it outside. I put it in my garden and I let whomever it is that eats that food, eat that food. So whether that's a raccoon, whether that's the gods, whether that's the spirits of the land. There's a crow that comes to my back garden every day. I call him Mooch. You can figure out why, because he's a right old mooch. He lands in the tree, caws at me. I go running out there with a bit of food, feed him, and then we chat for a little bit. And then he flies away. So I like to think that Mooch is one of the spirits of place that comes by and enjoys my food or the bits of leftover food that I give him. If you make food for the ancestors, how do you dispose of it? Same way. So sometimes I put it outside and I give it to, again, whomever is there. Sometimes I eat it. And I think that can be important too. In different traditions in ancient pagandom, there were times when people would make offerings and they'd put them on the temple steps, and the beautiful smells would waft up to the gods. They put them on the altar, and then whoever the temple attendants were, the priests or the priestesses of that tradition, they'd eat that food. They would leave it for a certain period of time, knowing that the gods were getting their sustenance out of it. But the reality of it is, our ancestors don't need cheese. They don't need to eat a bunch of grapes. They're going to get the essence of the grape. They're going to get the magic of the grape. They're going to get the intention and the love that's served in the meal. You eat the grapes and drink the wine and eat the cheese. So that's one way to dispose of it. Eat it, enjoy it, thank the gods or the ancestors when you eat it, or put it outside if you can. Give it to a being that's going to enjoy it. Let's see. Any more questions here? I enjoyed this so much. Oh my gosh, thank you so very much. I enjoyed writing this book. I love doing this presentation. I could talk about food all day, every day. And if you ask my wife, she'll tell you I do talk about it all day, every day. I'm probably annoying with that. I didn't know you could eat the offering. Yeah, you certainly can. Now, again, different traditions have different rules. There are some foods you definitely don't want to eat if you've given to the gods. But generally speaking, in most traditions, if you're making a devotional meal, you can absolutely eat that food. All right. Perhaps one more question. Okay. I'm ordering your book now. That's a great question. My favorite question that's been asked. No, just kidding. So please create my own YouTube channel. Did you just see that? I missed the counter. Must have been the wine. All right. I will think about creating a YouTube channel, and I'll put some of my favorite recipes up there. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, spending a little bit of time with me, learning about food. Thank you for sharing your questions. May you never hunger. May you never thirst. May your pantry always be full and your wine glass never, ever empty, or whatever is appropriate for you to drink. No judgment. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Magic of Food.